Hey guys, welcome to Bethany's Bookshelf. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in February. Okay, so for my wrap-up videos, I decided that I'm going to feature one picture book because I read a lot of picture books to my son throughout the month. I just thought I would try to pick one that from the month that I just really liked, or that I thought other people might like, or that I wanted to recommend. So this month I'm going to talk about Patrick Picklebottom and the Penny Book by Mr. J, illustrated by Gary Wilkinson. My grandpa sent this book to my son and I just really loved it. It's all about this little boy who is poor, but he has one penny, and so he goes to the store and this really nice man at the store sells him a book for a penny. And then on his walk home, he's like running into his friends who all have these like fancy new toys and they're talking about all the things they can do with them. And so in each situation, he's kind of like seeing how he can kind of experience that same thing through reading about it, through books. And so I just loved that. It's very bookish. And so this is the one I chose to share with you guys. So you should pick this up. So I am so excited to share my first wrap up with you guys. I read 11 books in February, which is great for me. I struggle with rating books on Goodreads. So for a while there, I was giving like every book that I kind of liked 5 stars. And then for a while I just stopped doing stars because it was too stressful. So I did try to rate some of the books that I read this month, but I'm probably not going to share that just because I haven't really figured out my rating system. So I'm just saying that up front because if you're expecting me to give stars, I'm probably not going to do that. I decided to try to kind of group my books into genres. Not everybody is interested in all the genres, so if you want to skip to a genre that you're interested in, then there we go. And if I can figure out how to put tags, or whatever those are called, not tags, maybe it is tags, the cool little things at the bottom that tell you what my sections are, I will do that. So the first one that I'm going to go over is like contemporary romance, pretty much, even though the books that I read in February that I would consider contemporary romance, or that Goodreads would consider contemporary romance, had so much more than romance in them, which is probably the case a lot of times. But I was just really excited about all the things that were going on in these books that I read. So I'm going to start with The Dating Charade by Melissa Ferguson. So this is the first Melissa Ferguson book that I've read, and I'm pretty sure it was her debut, and I really enjoyed it. I will be reading more from her. This is about Cassie and Jet, and it is alternating points of view going back and forth between Cassie and Jet. They end up going on a date, really hit it off, and then they both end up getting guardianship of kids. And so they don't want to tell the other one that because they don't want to scare them away. Some of it was really unrealistic because I think they were in kind of a small town. I don't know that for sure, but it felt like it was a small town. So I mean, it kind of feels unrealistic that like people aren't going to talk about what's going on in their lives. What surprised me about this book and what I really, really loved is there was so much more about the kids and fostering and like that whole situation of becoming a guardian for kids and like the trauma that happens that basically puts those kids in that situation, and how difficult it is for the kids and for the guardian, just all of that. There was a lot more of that than I was expecting. Like I would say there was a lot more of that in this book than there was romance, and I just really appreciated that, and I thought it was handled pretty well. Some of it was goofy, but there were some parts of it that I was like, oh, I'm really glad that they talked about that. So I really enjoyed that about this one. This is Thomas Nelson, so I think it's considered Christian fiction. There really wasn't very much, if any, like deep faith discussion. They like went to church, so that was it. So it was kind of like more of like a assumed Christian culture than actual like faith discussion, which is fine with me. I don't need that in every single book. I like that in my books, but this worked fine. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is Happiness for Beginners by Catherine Center. Catherine Center is one of my favorite rom-com, contemporary romance authors. I wouldn't say that her books are super memorable for me, but I'm really okay with that because I just really enjoy them. I feel like in the moment, they're just so good and draw me in, and so I don't need to remember them. This follows Helen, who is in her early 30s, recently got divorced, and decided to go on a wilderness survival course in the Wyoming mountains. She finds out that her little brother's friend is also going, which she's not happy about because she just really wants this to be like this experience for her. So she's really not happy about him going, and he also needs a ride. So like it's forced proximity. Anyway, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I like the plot and the other story, like the family dynamics. They kind of come into play, and what you get to find out about like her past and her family. And yep, it was really good. I mean, I haven't read a Catherine Center book that I didn't like. The last one in this category is Cancel the Wedding by Carolyn T. Dingman. This book, again, was about so much more than romance. So this is following Olivia, who is engaged, and her mom passed away like a year before this. And her mom has requested that her ashes be spread in a couple of different places in her hometown in Huntley, Georgia. And so Olivia decides, partially to like honor her mother, and partially because she's kind of not for sure that she wants to get married, she decides to go on a trip to Huntley, Georgia, and try to find out why her mom wants her ashes there. She doesn't know a lot about her mom's story, and I really enjoyed like the family mystery and her trying to like uncover her mom's story. Okay, the next category that I'm going to talk about is nonfiction. So I read 3 memoirs this month. I really enjoy memoirs. I really like listening to memoirs, especially if they're read by the author. It's just a bonus. So the first one is Becoming Free Indeed by Ginger Duggar Vullo. This is just kind of her story about growing up. Now I'm not going to remember the name of the man that her family follow, or even, oh my goodness. Okay, so if you don't know who Ginger is, she's from the show 19 Kids and Counting, or some sort of number and Kids and Counting. I don't remember what they ended up at, but so her family was part of this, I'm not even sure what to call it, I don't know, but under the teachings of Bill Gothard. That's who it is. Anyway, so she's talking a lot about him and his teachings, and just how kind of like how that affected her growing up, how it affected her faith, how it affected her mental health, kind of. For me, it was inspiring kind of seeing her faith develop in that situation. I thought it was really, really good. I liked hearing her story. Next one that I read or listened to is The Stories We Tell by Joanna Gaines. I felt like it was like, is this a memoir, or is this kind of like self-help, but like self-help in the best way? Because I'm not a huge self-help reader. It usually is just too much for me. But I think like the way that she wrote it, and just saying like, you know yourself better than the world does or than these books that you're reading do, and just encouraging people to like know their own story, to write down their story, even if it's for themselves in a journal. And I don't know, I just thought it was good. Like, it was just a nice read. I'm not going to remember a ton about it, but it was a good read. And the third one was, so it was kind of a memoir, kind of a true crime. It's My Friend Anna by Rachel Deloche Williams. This is a friend of Anna Delvey, was like a scam artist. She was like a fake heiress. And there is a Netflix documentary that I have not watched, and I don't plan on it. And the book talks about that a little bit because that is like kind of done from Anna's perspective, the Netflix series. And this book is from this friend of hers who was ripped off by her. So I was glad that I read this book. I feel like this story from Rachel's perspective, I would much rather get it from her perspective than this girl who was just lying to everyone and stealing people's money. So that was a good one. That kind of mixed two genres that I really love. I love true crime, specifically like true crime, like financial crimes or crimes that like don't involve murder. Sometimes I like that, but like I really like the true crime stories that read like fiction that are not murdery. So to give an example of a couple that I just really loved, were Edward Snowden's book Permanent Record and American Kingpin by, I can't believe I'm forgetting this right now. It's like one of my favorite books. Oh my goodness. Bilton, I think. Nick Bilton. Okay. Hopefully I got that right. I will check. I'm pretty sure I did though. All right, the next category that I'm going to talk about is like suspense, thriller, mystery, all of those wrapped into one. So the first one that I read was Aftermath by Terry Blackstock. This is the second Terry Blackstock book that I read. I definitely enjoyed the first one better. But I enjoyed this while I was reading it. This was about a bombing at a concert, political rally, and then the aftermath of that. So there was a man who was falsely accused, and we kind of followed him for a little bit. I think it was alternating between 3 or 4 points of view, which can get a little tricky. It was okay, but so it was him, the man who was falsely accused of this bombing, and then his childhood friend who became a lawyer and then was his lawyer. So it was her perspective for part of it. And then also just a girl who was there at the concert, lost 2 of her friends. There might have been, I feel like there was another perspective. I'm not even remembering. This was early in the month for me. So, and it was one of those books that is not going to stick with me like at all. So it was entertaining and good at the time, but that was kind of it. I didn't not like it while I was reading it. So anyway, it is a Christian suspense. I don't think I said that. Okay, the next one. This is also a Christian, I'm going to call it a Christian thriller. This is Nightfall by Nancy Mill. I was really excited to read this because part of it takes place in Wichita, Kansas, which is right around the area that I grew up in. And so I was like, oh, that's cool, even though it really wasn't that cool. And then, so it is following a serial killer who is a member of a cult. And if you're into that, then you might really enjoy this. It was not great for me. I just struggled kind of to get through it. It's following Alex, who is an FBI behavioral analyst. And she is like trying to figure out how to track down this serial killer. I think what I wasn't crazy about with it, and the reason why I'm calling it just a thriller, is that there really wasn't a lot of mystery or suspense. Like, you know who the serial killer is from the very beginning. And part of that is because you're getting his point of view, which I also didn't really like. So the very beginning has a poem or a nursery rhyme about the train man that's just like awful. And so, yeah. So it starts out when the serial killer is a child, which, oh my gosh, I just really don't like that. I don't like, I don't know. It was just, I don't like that. I don't like it. Whole part also just kind of freaked me out a little bit. Like, you're gonna figure out from watching my videos that I'm kind of sensitive when it comes to scary things. And so there were like full quotes from this cult book that were eerily similar to the Bible, and like I just had to skip over that because it just freaked me out. I don't know, I didn't like it. I can see why people would really like it, but for me, I just didn't. It just was not for me. Okay, I feel like this is such a swing. So this is These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. And this was my favorite book of the month. I can't stop thinking about it or talking about it. I loved it so much, like so much. This is following, first of all, I love this cover and the woods, and I've kind of figured out I love like stories set in the woods and in cabins and in isolation. I just, for some reason, I really like that. So this is following a man named Cooper and his daughter Finn, and they have been living isolated in this cabin in the woods for 8 years. The only contact they have with people are his friend who he visits once a year to bring them like a year's worth of supplies, and then their neighbor, who is kind of weird. His name is Scotland, and he plays a big part in the story, and you just can't really figure him out. Like, I don't know, it's hard to figure out how you feel about him, if he's a good guy, a bad guy, like what his deal is. He's just very mysterious. I think what I loved so much about this is that it was like mysterious, and the way that Kimmy like revealed the history of Cooper and why they're in the woods, I just loved how she did that. It was just like giving you like little pieces of his story over time, and I loved that. I loved like the moral dilemma. So something happens where Cooper has to kind of make some decisions about, I felt like he was just so relatable as a parent who is just trying to protect his daughter and maybe not always making the best decisions to do that, but yet you could relate to him. And even some other people in the story, I felt like the way that it all wrapped up, you could kind of see the perspectives of everyone, and you could see how people would come to that decision or would be motivated to do certain things. I don't really know how to get into all of this. All I know is that I loved this book so much. So when I got done with this, I picked up Fallen Mountains, that is also by her. Fallen Mountains is following a story about a man going missing in a small town called Fallen Mountain. It's alternating between before he goes missing and after. So alternating timelines, but they're not like too far apart. And in the before timeline, it's following like his friends and the people around him, their story. And then it's kind of like glimpsing back into childhood a little bit. And then in the after, it's following Red, who's the sheriff in town, in his like investigation. And then also some like things from the past that he's remembering, some mistakes that he's made that kind of have to do with this young man. And so it was really good. Also, I liked These Silent Woods better, but it was still really good. And both of these books combined I just know that I'm going to buy anything that Kimmy Cunningham Grant writes, because I was just so impressed with her writing, and these stories were just for me. So they're not for everyone, but they were definitely, for sure, 100% for me. So the last one I'm going to talk about that I read in February is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. This is a YA historical fiction. This is the only historical fiction that I read this month, which I love historical fiction. And I have never, this is the first Ruta Sepetys book that I've ever read, but I will be reading more from her also. This is set in Romania, 1989. It was the year I was born. And it's following a teenage boy named Christian. So Romania was under a communist dictator, and everybody was just living in fear. And so it's his story of his interactions with the secret police, and basically like not being able to know who you can trust. Somebody has told things about him that basically the secret police used to blackmail him into becoming an informant for them, and he doesn't know who that was. And so I don't know, it was like heartbreaking, obviously, just about living in that kind of fear and living under a dictatorship like that, and just being scared for your life all the time, being scared to talk in your own home and to your own family and to your friends and your teachers, and just not knowing like who's against you. And I thought it was like a great way to look at, you know, how that can happen to people, and how people can feel like they're like backed into a corner to basically be informants or die, or their family, bad things happen to their families. Her books are about things that aren't talked about a lot, like parts of history that don't get a lot of attention. I love that, and she's definitely a good author for that. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in February. I don't know if I'm gonna do my next videos all in one like this, or maybe do like a mid-month for especially for March, because it's middle grade March and I've already finished 3 middle grades, so I might have a lot to talk about in a couple of weeks because I am really enjoying them, and I'll probably want to talk about them. So I might do like a mid-month wrap up in March, and then try to do one at the end of March as well, and we'll see how that goes. Let me know what you read in February, what you loved, if you've read any of these books, or if you might want to pick them up. And I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great reading month.
Hi, this is Betty's bookshelf, and yeah, that's all the books of April, and yeah.